Hey you, it is Kaiti you. And you have eyes, so you've read the title of this video, you know what you're gonna get. Each of these 3 books is gonna tackle a different umbrella of life. So mental, emotional, and professional. So without further ado, let's get into it. Always doing okay on the surface and going through the motions that society was telling me to hit all those milestones, get into a good college, get good internships, get good jobs, but just 2 inches below my mental psyche and surface, there was always this deeper, anxiety-ridden, constantly hustling unhappiness within me. The sole reason why I was able to turn that mentality and outlook on life around is because of these 3 books that I'm about to share with you. The first book that I'm going to be telling you about radicalized how I view emotion, and that is Daring Greatly by Brené Brown. I picked up this book when I was just starting therapy. I was coming out of my first real heartbreak and relationship, and I was also going through intense burnout with social media. Who knew? Yeah, I did a really good job at hiding it, and how I was trying to deal with it at the time was just running away, numbing, trying to fill it with the next big success or milestone. And then I opened this book, and it felt like a stream running through a desert. This book really underscores the importance of vulnerability and why we must fully engage in being vulnerable to live the life we were meant to live. Now, you may be wondering, what is vulnerability? Well, perfect! Vulnerability is the willingness to show up and be seen as our authentic, imperfect self, even when we can't control the outcome. It's taking off the mask and hoping the real me isn't too disappointing. Some examples of vulnerability are getting fired, starting a business, saying I love you first, and first date after a divorce. The common line that connects all of them, what do you think it is? They're all actively seeking for human connection, and they're fueled by the fear of being unworthy of human connection. And when we feel like we are unworthy, that is what Brené Brown defines as shame. Hustle culture, productivity, perfectionism, numbing via alcohol and drugs. The list goes on of how this fear of shame and guilt and not being good enough has permeated every corner of our culture. I realized that in my relationships, in my work life, that was what was constantly driving this negative self-talk, because I was trying to prove to myself that I was good enough. And those things would never be good enough, because in order to truly touch people with your work, with a YouTube video, with a piece of art, with your writing, you have to first believe that you are worthy of creating an amazing piece of work to begin with. And if you don't love yourself to that extent, how are you ever going to be satisfied by other people's approval of you? And I want to read you guys this quote that I think really hammers it home. Because true belonging only occurs when we present our authentic, imperfect selves to the world, our sense of belonging can never be greater than our level of self-acceptance. All my homies out here being mean to ourselves, including me. This quote was meant for you. This book was meant for you, okay? For my inner circle of friends, every time it's one of their birthdays, I make sure to gift them a hard copy of this book, because that's how life-changing it was for me. And so here am I, metaphorically gifting a hard copy to all of you by saying, go out and read it. The next book changed my mental outlook of how I live my entire life, and it is Atomic Habits by James Clear. James Clear defines a habit as an action or behavior that you do so often that it's automated by your brain. We often tell ourselves that we have to make groundbreaking alterations, and of course the sheer commitment intimidates us, makes us procrastinate, and then we're stuck in our old ways. And I thought this was really fitting for this video, because especially with the new year, a lot of us tend to underestimate what we can do in 5 or 10 or 20 years, but we always overestimate what we can do in 1 year. Before reading this book, I was a person who would regularly pull all-nighters every single week to edit YouTube videos, even though I told myself every single week I would never do that again. Ever since the pandemic started, didn't leave my house for days, even though we as humans need vitamin D to function. I wouldn't go to the gym for weeks. I would procrastinate all of my homework assignments until the very last minute, until the due date. Do you see what I'm saying here? I thought that simply telling myself, I won't do this next week because I remember how crappy this feels, that's not enough, because our brain has automated those bad patterns of behavior. And because our brain is designed to automate as much behavior as we can to think and be creative, the quality of your life depends on the quality of your habits. James Clear really underscores the 1% compounding effect, which basically says any action you take on any given day is insignificant, but over time, a good habit compounds to make time your ally, but a bad habit compounds to make time your enemy. It's one of the first self-improvement books that didn't leave me feeling like I was an unproductive person, but rather gave me hope that I could become more productive and happy. I recommend this book to, I think 3 people every single day. I'm his unpaid marketing intern. Not that he needs it. Apparently, it was the best-selling book on Amazon, which quite literally could mean it was the best-selling book in the world in 2021. So let James do some work on you, okay? And that brings me to the final book in this video, and it's Anything You Want by Derek Sivers. Now, this book is bite-sized and it's packed to a punch. I finished it in one sitting, or I read all my books laying down in bed in my Kindle. So one laying down in my bed session to read this book, total of 2 hours. In this day and age, there's this constant narrative of needing to outdo yourself every quarter, every year, every semester, to glow up, to innovate, to scale, to grow. And because of all that, the moment that I feel like I'm plateauing, I have this tendency to catastrophize and feel like I'm a failure. And so I picked up this book, and man, it just frames everything back to, isn't the whole reason why we exist to make other people's lives easier, to make each other's lives easier? That's what the whole point of a business is to fill a need, to solve problems. And as long as your business is helping people, why are you beating yourself up? That was very, very comforting to me. The writing style is incredibly blunt, but absolutely comically endearing. I chuckled out loud multiple times while I was reading it. And even though it's the best business advice that I've ever heard, there's no business jargon. It's just human storytelling. I think even if you're not an entrepreneur or you're not self-employed, there are a countless amount of life lessons about how career ties into personal happiness and how we can't let career define our happiness. So those are my 3 books that changed my life. My husband is required to read these 3 books before ever thinking about putting a ring on it. I'm so much happier as a result of these. I wake up every day and I'm like actually happy to live life in a way that I never was hustling and going through the motions prior to reading these books. So yeah, I really hope you guys enjoyed this video, took some of these recommendations to heart. If you guys have your own opinions about these books or any other life-changing books that you recommend to me, I'm always on the hunt for more. Would love to read your comments and suggestions and insights down below. Thank you so much for watching this video. I love you, Youligans, so much, and I'll see you next week. Bye.